In the midterm over here. Overall, were there any questions before I get started, just in general?
I just want to argue for a point.
Oh yeah, because is that I know which one you're talking about. I know you circle one.
Which one?
Remember the one with the loop.
In C++, what is the result of the following 5 divided by 2? Doesn't it depend on if it's an int or a float?
Oh, you tell me what that is. Is that an int or a float?
That's an int.
He tried to be a sophist.
A division operation depends on whether it's an int or a float, but that one is integer division. That's the whole point. Like, if there was a float and the floating point number in there, yeah. I put that answer in there because I wanted to see if. I'm sorry for that. Sorry for that response.
Don't worry, man, I got it wrong too.
Yeah. That's why I gave you guys a curve. I gave you guys 3 questions. Just take it, and there's for the most part though. Hopefully, it was pretty clear. If there's any questions that you guys want me to spend more time on, let me know. I'm going to go over them in detail. So we're not going to spend a bunch of time. I debated giving you guys a bunch of like in-class exercises, going over specifically the questions that were the most troublesome. The most difficult ones by far were the logical problems, or like is the true, not false, and for and less than 2, those things. So I'm going to spend some time on that. But I don't want to really spend a bunch of time on it. Like, for the most part, as long as you guys understand the general idea behind it, you're going to practice it, you're going to use it more, and get more comfortable with it. All right, so let me go over these. Okay, the first question was, what statement would you use to print the phrase "Hello World" and start of the line? This is purely all about, do you understand or do you remember the syntax? This is directly from the review, so hopefully everyone, there were some people that got it wrong. I'm just going to chalk it up to misreading the symbols. There's only one right answer to this, which is the third one. The reason why you can remember is that these little arrows go into the cout object saying, hey, push this string into the cout object. They go in the direction of where you want it to go. The key also is that you need to separate all the things you want to print with more of those operators. Okay, what statement would you use to create an integer variable with the name cheeses? Int is a name here. That's self-explanatory here. What statement would you use to assign the value 32 to the variable cheeses? So the answer was A. So we want to be able to take 32 and put it into cheeses. Question, what is wrong with the following loop? This is not really an open-ended question, but quite a few people got this wrong, actually. So if you look at that while true statement, that while statement, while loops only run if the statement inside of them are true. The problem is that that variable, int x, is getting assigned to 0. And if you remember, 0 is false, and any non-zero number is true, which means that it's basically saying while false, which means that it doesn't actually run, so it stops immediately, which is the answer here. Why would a programmer create a while true loop? So a few people said when you want a loop to run only once, or when you aren't sure if you want the loop to repeat or not. This is definitely used for an infinite loop. This is a loop that will run infinitely, and the only right answer here was that the main game loop of a program, remember, you want to run until some condition causes you to break out. We actually did one of these exercises in class, which was guessing, either guessing a number. We also did one for, do you want to continue or not? So these things are used often for the game loop or program because you want the program to run for as long as the program needs to. All right, this one a lot of people got wrong, which was, hey, the following is a valid assignment, char, my char equals 65. So this number here, we even did an example in class how that this actually represents the letter A. So if you remember, characters represent single letters, and every letter has a corresponding number associated with it. So this character here is actually just an integer. That's all it is. So this is question straight out of the book. This one here says, hey, character my char equals 65. What this actually means is set this equal to the letter A, which means that it's actually a valid assignment. If you guys actually plug this in to a program and you compiled it, it would give you no warnings and would run. No problem. Yeah.
Not challenging it because I know it's right, but when I was looking over the review before the test, I actually put something like that on Visual Studios at my house, and it just printed like a box with a question mark in it.
Yeah,
Why did that happen?
because when I gave the review, it was a 35. The question was not does this output to something that you can read? The question was, will C++ let you do that? Is it a valid assignment? Okay. Right. So it's like, it's not about like, yeah, because it actually, depending on the character you print, you'll get a smiley face or like a spade, one of those things. So it's all about whether this thing is actually valid or not.
Okay.
Because again, like this thing can represent any number.
Could you assign any number to that?
Yeah, you could.
Any integer?
Yeah, any integer. I mean, there's a limit. Like if you put like just 1,000 zeros after it, I have no idea like if C++ will let you compile that, but a reasonable number. Right, so in C++, what is the result of the following 5 divided by 2? It does not actually depend. So, wow, that's like super tiny. Let's see if I can get this guy in here. So remember that division operations, it depends on whether you have any floating point numbers in there. If you have floating point numbers in either the numerator or the divisor, it will be a floating point result. However, if there's integers only in the operation, then you will only get an integer result. And an integer result means do that division and it just remove all the decimal points, which means the answer here is 2. C++, what does the percentage mean? A lot of you guys got this right. So most of you guys got this right. It's just take the modulus of a number. Unfortunately, even though you knew necessarily what the symbol was, you didn't necessarily know what that meant. Because the result of that is something that you actually have to do math to do. So right after that, I asked you, what is 15 modulo 4? So 15 modulo 4 means divide 15 by 4, and then whatever's left over, that's your result. Which means if I have, I'm just going to do it over here. 15 modulo 4. So if I divide 15 by 4, this is normally equal to 3 point, whatever 3 over 4 is, 3.75, right? That's what normally is. So 4 goes into 15 3 times total, right? So that means that 4 times 3 is equal to 12. So what's left over from that difference there between 12 and 15? 3. You get 3. So the answer here is that it depends on how many times that 4 goes into that number. So I asked you that again over here, 20 modulo 3. How many times does 3 go into 20? Even cleanly, 6 times, which means I have 3 times 6 is 18. So how many numbers are left over to do that operation? So that's 20. 4. This is just an arithmetic problem at that point. So you have to do that division to find out what's left over. So in this case here, 3 goes into 20 6 times with 2 left over. The nice part is that modulo will always give you back a whole number. So you could immediately throw out A and B, which would mean that you would be left over with just C or D to guess from. And from that, if you guess D, that would be correct. True or false variable names may begin with a number. That's just false. You cannot. You can only start a variable name with either an underscore or a letter. All right, arithmetic. So this is purely all about, this is not really even about programming, it's just knowing about the order of operations that you have. So I like to use my dear Aunt Sally, but you guys learn probably other things. So multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. You have parentheses first if there are any, but I didn't put any parentheses. So you have 3 times 4 in the order. So 12 plus 2 is 14. This one here, multiplication first and then division. So 24 divided by 8 to 3. And here, what do you do first? Multiplication. Multiplication, then division, then addition, then subtraction, which means it's 3 divided by 24. So what do we already say if 2 integers divided by one another are equal to? An integer number. So 3 divided by 24 is equal to point, I don't know, 1 something.
That's why.
This is an integer math. There's no floating points in here. If you had even one floating point in there, that result would be completely different. The important thing to remember here is that multiplication is first. So, all right, let's get to the hard stuff. So evaluate the following and state whether it turns out to be true or false. So the way I want you guys to think about these logic problems, I want you to work from the inside out. Kind of like how doing any math problem that has parentheses to deal with. These are just math problems, they just happen to have the words true or false in them. So if I work from the inside out, I'm not even going to look outside the parentheses first. So you look at this and say true or false. What is inside the parentheses here? So if it's true or false, the result is going to be true. However, if you look at the parentheses as wrapping the entire thing, there's an exclamation point outside of it, which means take the result of whatever the parentheses have and flip it, which means the answer here is false. If I were to do this again, let's say I didn't have the exclamation point in there, the answer would just be true, right? If this thing didn't exist, then the answer would just be true. The exclamation point is applied after the fact because it's on the outside of the parentheses, which means you work and solve what's inside parentheses first, and then you work out from there. I like to just replace whatever the contents are of this thing. So literally, if I were to do this on paper, I would just go over here and take the result of this, and I would just So I'll just take this result here, and I would literally just replace that with whatever is in the inside. So I would just do that, which then turns into what is not true, which is false. So let's do this for the remainder of them. Work from the inside out. So this is how I solve all of these. I work from the inside out. So in this case here, I'm going to solve this one here. What is not false? That's true. What is true and true? It's true. What is false or true? That's true. Okay? This is false. Okay, same thing here. What is not false? That's true. What is not true? I'm just going through and replacing it. Okay? And then what is true or false? That's true. And then I replace this here. Anyone have questions on this? Like, I will go back and redo it. So does that make sense what I just did here? So with this problem here where it says not false and not true, just replace this, work from the inside out, and replace each piece. So not false is true. Right? Not true is false. If you break down a problem and solve it piecemeal like this, it becomes much more manageable. It becomes almost like trivial at that point. All right. Evaluate the following and state whether it turns out to be true or false. Again, is 4 less than 2? That's false. Is 6 greater than or equal to 2? That's true. Okay. In this case, I'm going to apply this exclamation point to the result here. So I'm going to replace this whole thing with true. So it's true and true. So the answer here is true. This is the most complicated one. Luckily, these you can either guess 50-50. If you had trouble, you had a 50% chance of getting it right. But I threw a modulo in there just because. Is a modulo of modulo 2 greater than 0? Well, what's 5 modulo 2? What is the result of that? 1. Because remember, 2 goes into 5 2 times, and there's 1 left over. So is 1 greater than 0? It's true. What is the opposite of true? It's false. What is 4 divided by 10? That's 0. Is 4 less than 0? False. Okay. What is false ORed with false? It's false. And what is the opposite of that? True. Okay. This is a problem. This is a matter of reducing a problem. You guys ever do reduction problems in algebra, right? You take things and you make them smaller. I don't know if you guys had, hopefully you guys had some amount of algebra. This is not even all about like algebra. This is like taking a complicated statement and making it simpler. So in this case here, I just gave you numbers, so you can just literally just put in numbers here. So 250 and y is equal to 200. So I'm just going to plug them in. So this one here is 250 greater than or equal to 200, true. Is 250 less than 400, true. Is 200 less than or equal to 200, true. And is 200 greater than 400, false. Which means all of these things have to be true for it to be true, which means that this thing here ultimately ends up being false. And in this case here, I reduced it again. True and true is equal to true. You can reduce these two again. They both equal true. And then reduce this again, and you get false. Okay. All right. Questions? All right, given the variable into I equals 0, what is the value of I after I plus plus? Plus plus just means add 1 to it. So the answer here is B. All right, given the variable into I equals -1, what is the value of I after the operation I plus equal 5? That literally just means take the value of I and add 5 to it. So what's -1 plus 5? It's 4. Given the variable I equals I equals 12, what is the value of the operation after I minus equals 6? Just subtract 6 from it. 6. Okay. If x has the value of 10, what is the value of x after the following code has executed? So first, this is a simple if statement. Does this line of code even run? That's the first question you should ask yourself. So you should say, okay, is 10 greater than 2? And it is. That means that this code actually does run. And it just turns into the same problem that was there before. You just take 10 and you subtract 4 from it. So you get 6. Okay. So it's a little trickier. If x has a value of 5 and min has a value of 12, what is the value of min after the following code has executed? So there's two variables here. So x is equal to 5. So why don't we just substitute 5 in here. That. And min has a value of 12. So first, let's see if this statement is true. Is 5 less than 12? Yes. So that means that that line of code runs. What does that line of code make min equal to? 5. So that's all the answer is. What is the value of min after the following code is executed? It helps to plug in the numbers even in your head. Like, you can do this in your head, but it's better to just do it on paper if you have the opportunity. All right. What would the following code fragment print if it were part of a valid program? So this one's a little tricky because it uses the prefix and the postfix operator. So as a refresher, the prefix operator will run before that variable gets used. The postfix operator will get run after the variables have been evaluated. So in this case here, I'm combining both of them. So j starts out at 3. So it helps to actually write this out. I'll do this on the computer here so it's recorded. So what is plus plus j? First, let's see if that loop runs at all. Plus plus j means add 1 to j before you evaluate it, which means j was 3, but before I use it, I'm going to add 1 to it, so now it's 4. Is 4 less than 7? Yes. So it'll run this at least once. Cool. Now the question is, will it output a 5 or a 4 here? So because that plus plus is after the j, that means that it will use that variable and then add 1 to it, which means that whatever is running this line of code will take a look at j and use the value of j as it is, and then it will add 1 to it. So in this case, cout is saying, hey, I don't want to print out what j is, and then I want to add 1 to it. Which in this case means, what is the value of j right now, which is 4. And then it'll add 1 to it. The difference is that if this was, So there's only one answer here, it'd be A. If this was plus plus j, this would say, hey, add 1 to the value of j before I even look at it. That's all the differences between those two. It's also, you read from left to right. When it says print out what j is, before it can print out j, it has to basically go through this plus plus. Right? So in this case, the question was asking this, which means that it will print out 4 first. This will turn into a 4 plus 1. So right on the next line, you can even think of it like this. Takes j. This is basically the equivalent of me doing this. Right? Turn j into 5. Then a loop one more time at 6, and then I'll print out what that is on the next line. Okay, here's another question. What would this following code fragment print if it was part of a valid program? So the question here is, you kind of should be able to figure out first whether how many times this loop is going to run at all. Because you look at this number, and it's 13, and you look at the expression inside the while loop, and you see whether that's true or false. So no matter what, is 13 ever going to be less than 10? So false. So you can say like this loop will only ever run once. So you know it's got to be B, C, or D. Because this has 2 lines on it that output 2 numbers. The question is, what will it print out? So a do while loop will run whatever's inside the loop body before it checks the expression. So in this case here, k is equal to 13, and all we do is we just print out what k is, and then we check to see if we should loop again. It doesn't matter that there's a plus plus here. That plus plus actually doesn't even do anything. All it's doing is incrementing k by 1, but that expression is still going to return false no matter what. Which means no matter what, this thing will only ever output 13. Okay. So this was me testing curly braces. I actually put, basically it's 2 almost identical questions back to back. They're very similar, only this one has curly braces and this one does not. I even tried to let you guys know about the lack of the curly braces. Don't let the formatting throw you off here. The key is that for if statements, it'll run whatever's in a body after it. But if you don't put curly braces in there, it only ever runs the next line. So that's why the difference between these two is that this, you don't even have to look at anything here. The only thing that matters is the fact that this if statement will run only once, and this line right here will always run no matter what x is. So if you tried to plug in x here, you might have thought that this line doesn't actually run. Well, the key is that in C++, it's the same. This is exactly the same as me writing that. When you don't have curly braces following an if statement, it only ever runs that line of code, that next line of code. Okay. So the answer here is C. It always added 1 to counter. All right. If x has a value of 2, what is the value of counter after the following code has been executed? So this is basically the same problem, only now this is wrapped inside curly braces. And counter starts at -1. So here, x is less than or equal to 0. That's false. So it never runs this line of code. It never increments counter by 1, which means counter remains what it started at, which is -1. The answer here is D.
Thank you.
Hey, what's up?
The answer to the previous one, the counter one. You just said it was.
No, not mine.
No, no.
I know I got
counter.
that wrong.
The counter one, yeah.
No, but
So is it
The
one?
markers, it's 1. Okay. That was my mistake. Go ahead and give it here. Let me. I'll update your score then. Thanks.
You did the same thing on mine too, Keith.
Did I do the same thing on yours?
I got it wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, I think you won too. But I marked yours actually
I'm
correct.
like, oh, I
No, I
think
should have marked it
it's-
incorrect.
Oh, yeah,
You get
yeah.
to keep that though. So I screwed that up. Anyone else? Did I screw up anyone else's answer? The previous question should have been.
No.
The answer to this one is 1. So it's C on this question, and this one is going to be D. Cody, I'll update your score. What are the first and last values of I output by this loop? So here, it's another case of what is the order of operations? So what happens before the cout occurs? That expression is evaluated here. Inside that expression, there happens to be an increment operator, so it adds 1 to I before it prints this out, which means I will be equal to 2. So a lot of people got that right, but the problem was a lot of people confused between B and C. So the way you tell whether it's going to run and print out 7 or 8 is you actually plug in 7 up there, right? Plug in the number 7. So if this is 7, I'm sorry, if this is 6, will that thing still run?
Yes.
So if this is 6, 6 plus plus, so that will actually still run. So it definitely prints out 7. The question is, will it print out the next one afterwards? So if let's just change the loop here. Will that loop ever run is the question. So remember, when the plus plus is after the variable, it uses what that variable value is first, and then it adds 1 to it. So when it's looking to see whether it should loop again, at 7 plus plus is less than 8, it says is 7 less than 8 first, and then it adds 1 to it after that's been true. Which means that even though I is 7 here, I has 1 added to it after it's done evaluating this. Which means when it gets into that cout, it actually has a 1 added to it already. Just for clarity on this one, a lot of people got this wrong. Okay, so this is basically the the problem here. I'm gonna put a breakpoint there just to show you. So I right now is 7, right? And n right now is 8. So will it go into the next line of code, into that loop body? All right. Will it go to line number 10 or not? Because it's about to ask if I is less than 7. So the question is, will it do that operation first? Will it add 1 to that and make it at 8? No. Or will it do that afterwards? So yeah, it uses what that variable is here first, and then it will add 1. So if you actually step here, I will change from 7 to 8. And then it will print out this line. So the difference is that if you had this before the I, so I is 7 right now. But before that expression is evaluated, it will add 1 to it, which will mean that I will turn into 8, and then won't go in there, because that plus plus happens before it uses that variable. All right? So ultimately, it's all boiling down to how many times will that loop actually run? And in this case, the answer here is going to be C. All right. Someone got lucky and they didn't get a last page of the midterm, so they got those 4 questions for free. But yeah, that's basically all there is to that midterm. It's very finicky. It's like off by 1, being off by just 1 number. You know, it makes the difference between answering the question right or wrong. But you know what? That also means the difference between your program crashing or not. Off by 1 errors are like notoriously bad. They're so, it's like you've never felt the frustration of spending 6 hours looking at something just to find out that 1 number was off because someone did a plus plus did a plus plus I instead of an I plus plus, right? That's the kind of shit that you run into, like, and you realize that happens, and it's like, I can't believe I wasted my entire day doing that. So it's important to realize that, you know, details do matter. You can't be fuzzily, you can't be partially right. Give yourself 10% points. I gave a curve to the test. All right, well, did anyone else have any issues with the midterm that they thought the answer I marked wrong that I should not have? I'm going to update that.
So just for clarity on the lack of curly braces one, it just runs the next line of code?
Yep, only runs the next line of code. That's correct.
Each question is 3 points.
Yeah. 3 percentage points. All right. So now that like hell's out of the way, I'm sure it wasn't very fun for you guys to do that kind of stuff. I know I hated midterms too, but it actually really helps me because I get a really good idea of where people are struggling for some concepts. If you don't like midterms, I can always give quizzes every day. I don't like those either, but I will give a final as well.
Would it be the same as the midterm?
It'll basically be the same format. I'm going to give you guys a review sheet at a time, and you guys can study the review sheet, and the questions will be based on the review.
Are we going to SDVA now?
So I was going to do that. However, I feel like we still didn't spend enough time on doing for loop review and objects. So I do want to spend time on objects and arrays before we go into SFML, just a little bit. And if we have time, I will go into SFML today. All right, midterms. Okay, so let me go over review, give you guys a lab exercise, and I'll give you guys a break, and then we'll come back and we'll go over new stuff today. So I want to talk about objects and arrays later. We're going to talk about for loops for now, just to refresh your memory on what they are. So a for loop is basically just another type of loop, but it's kind of a step-by-step recipe for how many times you want to loop. And there's 4 pieces to a for loop. You set a value initially. You perform a test to see whether the loop should continue. You do whatever the loop says, and then you update the values that are used by that loop. So as an example, this is an example of a for loop that loops 5 times. So the loop in question is right here in the middle. There's 4 pieces to that loop. The initialization here is the first part. The expression that you evaluate to see whether you should continue looping is there, and then the increment operator is there. So the general structure of a loop is like this, where you have the initialization, the test expression, the update expression, and the body. the problem that a lot of people run into is the order of operations, the order that these things run. So I want to kind of go over that. So this is the flow chart that you should be thinking about in your head. And the way I kind of remember it is that I just follow the lines. Like I kind of like draw this imaginary line in my head every time I see a for loop. What I kind of do is I wish I could do this. I draw this like magic hop. Like I look at this, look at this, look at this. I go like 1, 2, 3, 4. In my head, I'm like looking at this in that order. I like kind of read it from left to right, go to the body, and then I go all the way to the end. Because that's the order that it runs in. This is 1, 2, 3. Just restart. And this thing only runs once. So the nice part is you can skip that every time afterwards. So then it just turns into 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4. It's almost like a circle. Yeah, it just goes like this. In that order, kind of clockwise. That's the way I look at a loop. That's the way I kind of remember that's how that loop goes through. So I gave you guys homework to this effect. Are there any questions about for loops? Like why they're useful, why we would do them? So we're going to go over detail about why they're useful for games, because I mentioned how useful they are and how common they are, because they're used for looping over like lists of things a lot. So we're going to do stuff with lists today. I gave you guys homework to roll some dice. So I'd like to collect that as well as give a review exercise. So let's go ahead and put that up on Zool. So you guys know the drill. First initial, last name, please, for your homework. And once you're done handing in your homework, let's go over this review exercise. So this one is using a for loop. It's just one program. And for your time, I gave you guys a bonus one. I just want you guys to write a program that asks for 2 numbers. And then I want you to output the sum of all the numbers in between those 2. For example, if you typed in a 2 and an 8, the program would output 35. And then if you get done with that and you have time, I'd like you to actually print out the expression with all the little plus symbols showing the work that's being done. So first things first, you should get this part working, and then you should be able to get this part working after that. Okay? So hand in your homework, spend some time doing the lab, and then let me know when you're done. And if everyone gets done early, we'll go right into the lecture. And Cody, I corrected your score.
So for us, you wanted the function n in the loop for?
For the homework?
Yeah. 'Cause I just did the recursive function. I didn't do the loop.
That's fine, because you should know if you were
Yeah.
just do the recursive.
I was making sure, otherwise I could start. I just turned in the recursive one.
Yep. Yeah. No.
I didn't know, I was trying to look up what the factorials of numbers would be to check if it was right.
So almost had it right. You're doing the right thing here, and you're doing the right thing here. But you can actually simplify it and just do this.
So I don't even need some.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
That's good to know, though.
So that's the key. It's like a 3-line function to calculate the factorial this way, because you can use a variable. You basically did that, but like there's no point to it, because it'll return you the result of this, and it'll remember what the result of this is. And it basically goes. It's kind of like inception, right? Like it goes. You can think of this being expanded out to have like all the numbers following it. Because like here. What if number is 2, right? So you go in here, you say, hey, number is 2 is equal to 2 times the factorial of 2 minus 1, which is 1, right? So then you call this function with 1. And if you return 1 here, this ultimately turns out to be 1, right? If we put 3 in here, if the number is equal to 3, and that's not actually code, I'm just plugging it in there.
Yeah.
This is equal to 3 times the factorial of 3 minus 1, which is 2. Okay? And what does that turn into? What is the factor of?
Do another function.
Yeah, so what I like to think about is it does like this. I'm just going to copy this down here. Now number is equal to 2. Okay? This is equal to 2 times factor of 1. What is factor of 1? It goes like this. So I'm just going to copy these in order. What is the factorial of 1? It literally is just this, right?
Yeah.
So here's what you can do. You can take each of these and plug them in. So factor of 2 is this, right? We'll just take that and place it here. Factor of 1 is this, is just 1, so it just turns into that. Literally, it's like doing that, like concatenation of the expressions in line right there.
What was the question?
This is not for everyone. This is just for the people that were doing the recursive version. The rest of you guys had to use a for loop to do the homework, which was to calculate the factorial and to roll dice. If you're not sure where to even start with this, I would just, if you're completely lost, I would just start with, hey, read one number in and print out that one number. Then read 2 numbers in and print out both numbers. Once you get there, I would also start with just a loop. Why don't you guys just write a loop that literally just takes from 2 to 8 and adds them all together? Or even just loops from 2 to 8 and prints out the numbers in between those every time. The key here is not to look at this problem and be like, holy crap, like there's so much stuff to do, I don't even know where to start. Break down the parts that you do know how to do. You can write a simple loop that goes from 0 to 10. But instead of going from 0 to 10, why don't you make it go from 2 to 8 instead? Just change those values. Anyone need some help getting started with this lab? I'll come around and help you.
Converting it into CSS taking a while.
would start with your homework. It's a good place to start. If you don't remember how to write a for loop, you can use the book, or you can Google for loop for C++. That will also help you. That's what I do. Trust me, I Google stuff for C++ every day. I don't memorize everything. Why don't you just start with a loop that just prints out from 1 to 10? Do you remember? If you don't remember how to do that, just Google it.
I'm just trying to figure out, like, they're gonna enter 2 numbers.
Just start with a loop that prints out from 1 to 10. Okay, just gonna you have most of it right. You can keep that stuff. But just focus on this right here. So what does a for loop look like? You almost have it right. So if you remember last week how I went over the problems of printing out from 1 to 10, why don't you open up Internet Explorer, open up a web browser, go to for loop C++, Google that. It's not a bad thing to be Google that kind of stuff. Just Google like for loop C++.
Oh, fuck, man.
Yeah, any of those, like literally put on or something. Right, so that's what it looks like. So we go down to like an example. There's one. So there's int a equals 10 while a is less than 10. Yeah, that's just a plus plus. So you have this part right. You basically are doing a equals 0 for you. But the middle part there, see how so that thing says as long as the middle part is true, keep looping. Right? So go back to your program and look at the expression you wrote in the middle. Yeah, it would go infinite. So instead, just do a is like do something less than some number. Pick a number there instead of 0. Like do 10 or 8. Yeah, 8 is fine. And just print that out first. Just start like that. Do like a C out. Print out in.
Huh?
Oh, you can do ENDL. Okay, you should just run that. Just start with that. Start out with a loop that puts out. So you forgot to declare your I. You need to do it with I.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, so it ended really fast. So you can go.
Yeah, they have like this monitor. Here you go.
So 0 through 7. Okay. That's the first part of it. You have it printing out from 0 to 7. Why don't you have it print out the numbers from the 2 that you typed in? So now this is the next part. I would just have you do so close this. And I would just have you, instead of going from 0 to 8, why don't you use those 2 numbers that you asked for?
So I'm saying this would be, that would say, number 1, 60%.
Well, you want to keep that. So the key here is that you're not going to touch that letter. You're going to modify the other parts. So how does this loop know to go from 0 to 8? What are the 2 things involved? So this is the initialization. That says start at 0. How does it know to go until 8? Not there. So why don't you change those to use the values that you typed in? What number do you want to start at? That's the question. Do you want to start at 0, or do you want to start at the number you know?
Would be the number.
So why don't you use one of the numbers you typed in instead of 0? Try putting in some really big numbers. Okay. Yeah, you should. You do less time equal.
So we were talking about so I found out that there's damage modified, and so when I was doing the trying to play with it a little bit, it wasn't really matching it when I had it.
So I want to, yeah,
Test the range.
I kind of want to let you know that typically those formulas that you use are very specific and probably have more than just multipliers. You have to be, like, the damage formulas that we use for armor in Overwatch, or the damage formulas that we use for Diablo 3, are way more complicated than just roll one number and that's your damage. It takes in all these other factors into consideration, like how much intelligence do you have, or strength do you have, what level are you compared to the other guy, how much armor does a guy have, if you crit or not, do you have crit bonus, are you doing elemental damage, are you doing elemental damage? It's a lot more complicated than just a simple number against another number, and that's what damage formulas are. And the only thing I can recommend you is to Google like damage formula.
Yeah, that's what I was doing, was there was like there was a chart with every single longer and what their modifiers, and then there's the mitigation modifiers for defense.
So do they have a formula? Like damage equals blah 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 times this times that. Okay, let's worry about this first. Get this working first.
Oh, well, we had both monitors in this computer, which is one of the most too, yet the mouse is stuck in this computer, but it's right here. So we can use that.
How's it going? That's a lot. Show me your shoulder. Yeah, sorry, yeah. I was looking over your shoulder.
Doesn't need to be a number.
Okay, so you have part of the for loop, right? Let me show you an example of the for loop. You can just copy it from here. Do you see that for loop in the middle there? Yeah, why don't you just copy that for now and just have it print out. That loop will run 5 times. Start with that and then worry about the rest of it. So I want to just see you print out this. So instead of using I, you can use 10. Just follow that pattern. Oh, is this factorial?
Wait, am I doing this right?
My issue is what I'm doing is I'm
Okay, so you only need one for loop.
No, because it's 1 plus 2 plus.
Oh, you only right, yeah. So yeah.
I got it.
So this number, so you're add plus equal 8 every time. So you don't really want to, that means add 8 to the number every time, but you want to go 1 every time, right? You don't want to go 8 every time.
So I don't need to put no.
Right. You just do plus 1.
You don't know how many things that. You don't know how many times that's.
What was the thing he had there? 2 plus 8?
Yeah.
Plus 8.
It's like
Why do you want the 8?
I'm like,
This is why we.
No. I was looking at the.
Oh, the lab exercise? Yeah. So let's go over this. So remember, it starts. So your loop is going to start at the number 2 and run until it's run as long as number is less than or equal to 20. And then it's going to do whatever's inside the semicolon. So this thing is kind of throwing you off here because this is adding all the even numbers. It's adding 2 every time. In this case, you don't want to have 2. You want to have 1. Right? So how do you take that at the end, which is the increment expression, and add 1? So like, look at these. So look at this loop. Can you tell me how many times that loop is going to run? Roughly.
Yeah, 1.
it's so close.
Or by 100.
So what's the thing that actually makes that number go up? What is a part of this loop that actually makes that number? Right. So what is I plus me? What is I? It's going to increment of right. Increments of 1, right? So it's going to go from 1 to 1.
It's weird if you do it backwards. It
Which means how many
screws
times
it
is
all up.
About
See, that
yeah.
flash like
Okay.
8 and 2.
So this is going in increments of 1. What is this going in?
What do you use for the example?
This is weird.
Right. Okay, so you want to go in increments of 1. Okay, for yours. So how do you make this go in increments of 1?
By changing this to,
I plus. Yep. But you don't want this I there.
Like,
I,
by one.
like look at how he's using I as the variable.
and I, which is.
That's what's number for you, right? You had it already. Okay, so there you go. So now, can you tell me how many times this thing is going to loop? What does it start at? What does this do? Okay, and what does it go until?
20.
Right. Okay, so you're adding all the numbers between 2 and 20. So your sum will be whatever 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5. Go ahead and run it. That seems about right. Okay, so you did the hard part. The hard part's out of the way.
Just
Almost, yeah, just making that for loop, but now you need to just ask the player for the first and second number.
Okay.
Okay, so and then you need to replace your loop with that first and second number.
Thank you so much.
I can't figure out why. Yeah, I can't figure out why it's not letting me do it. It's like giving me an extra number.
Trying to figure out.
So you need to use that first number that they typed in. So what does your loop? What does your loop variable start at? What's you're using n, right? What does n start at? 0. Okay, cool. What does n run until? How many times? Num2?
It runs until num2, yeah.
Right. So you're starting at 0. You're adding up all the numbers from 0 to num2. So instead you need to add up all the numbers between num and num2.
Okay.
You don't need to put a variable to hold the number, you can just return.
Just return it?
Yeah. Yeah, look it up. I think I got what you wanted, but.
So I think I got it. It runs perfectly, but
Two to eight.
however, they enter a bigger number first and then a smaller number. It's not gonna work. So is that okay? Or
So how would you fix numbers now?
I don't know. I mean, you would figure it out faster because it's there as it is, but you would have to rewrite it like that. This is pretty.
I was just looking through the values. So the way you would do this is you would actually use an if statement. So
If B is greater than A.
what you need to do is you need to swap those two numbers. So this is actually another classic
Why
question.
do you think it will?
How do you swap A and B? How do you swap A and B? You have two variables. How do you make them swap? So I don't want you to get too caught up in that, but that's how you would do it. You write an if statement saying one is greater than the other, right? Swap A and B, and then just use, and then your loop. You don't have to touch this at all. You put an if statement right in between.
The reason that I don't think it's gonna work.
And you literally say if A is greater than or equal to B equals A. Yeah, the problem is if you set B equal to A, now they're both equal to the same value. You lost A. The trick is you need to have a third variable, a temporary variable, which is used to swap. You ever play like, if you're like,
Alright, so in here I have a
terminology for this. Like if you need to like, if you have three things you need to hold, you need to like,
Well, yeah, so you have, place it down and put it over that place.
yeah, you need a placeholder to remember what it was.
Okay.
So you need a place to store the value. Anyway, if you want to equal that, go ahead. Like that's actually a really good problem.
What was the second part?
It was once it's done, I want you to print out the actual.
I know it's
I'm trying to figure it
Or
out.
less than the.
enter 1 is over enter 2.
Enter 20. You got it? You know, you have like this for your range,
Right.
you know, like it's gonna be a
So
bigger number.
I did it differently, but the way he explained it is that you would just need to make an if statement. saying that
That doesn't look
this number's being this number's then you swap them out in order to swap this out.
No, uninitialized, so it's not gonna work.
You wanna do that for the bonus
Get
one?
A, put it in the placeholder
Do
spot.
you know how that?
Overcomplicating
that
things
A
that
is
it's
the same
hurting.
Look at it, if in your case, it's
Oh,
the
that's
first number has to be
spot
your
and the second switch.
It's hurting.
Why don't you do an if statement?
Make it hurt
First
more.
number is less than the second.
I can't.
No pain.
I have to
You do that before.
You get it?
Yep. How do you swap the numbers?
What happens if you put the bigger number first?
You can have a bigger number first?
Yeah.
It does like,
One that
it does
stores-
a lot.
It does? Well,
Like,
let's see what happens.
like, it just, remember I taught you how to do that last time?
Swap, yeah, it's just like swapping the players.
Maybe I didn't. I thought it was.
Go what?
I'm trying to get it. I wanna use position and then.
Oh, well, I mean, okay,
Create a new.
but you can't edit the values, those are already like
Pass
set.
it through here.
Yeah, okay, that sounds cool.
So,
And I try.
Well,
you put it in the constructor.
Constructor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I do that, but it won't let me.
Show me what you mean, that it doesn't let you do something.
No, that's the first choice.
Spot.
this is how I edit it.
What was it not playing the?
No, it's playing it when I drop it off.
I see what you did. Yeah, and so I
You know,
edit.
kind of a bit too soon.
It's me, and so we can take it to the first number.
Cool, okay.
which is
So then how do you pass that information?
And it gives me the total amount at the
How
bottom.
should I do that?
Now, if I wanted to just get it, so it just displays this one, to take this out of the for loop and then put this outside of the curly braces, and I'll just do it once, but no. Only thing is though, when you, if I do 8 first and then 2, it's just like, what the fuck are you trying to tell me to do?
This is the same thing that happened on mine.
You have to call
Yeah.
When I'm doing my
parent
give me
constructor.
different numbers, give me like 3 and I was like,
So.
Yeah, so in order to fix that, you need to put an if or a while, another loop in between that basically swaps B and A.
So see how state doesn't have a constructor that takes nothing?
Oh,
So
you
what you actually need to do,
I haven't done the second part.
the problem that you're running into
As
is
a bonus extra.
anytime you create a state, you have to tell it which order, right? That's the issue. It requires you to.
It's
So
the
in your case down
count.
here,
It's
when
the
you're making those states,
like that.
see,
It
all of
does
these
that.
things have this, even this one here, requires you to pass it.
Oh, so then you, what if you just?
So, in addition to passing the position here, you need to pass the order as well.
oh,
So, it just copy, so go to the state notation, I would copy that argument.
got it.
Yep, copy that. Or you're gonna actually put that, you're gonna add that as a parameter.
The only thing I'm trying to do is,
Yeah, so I would add that as,
So
like,
you-
you know,
you can plug it in.
add that parameter.
the last
And
number.
actually, what you need is not call the.
Well, it does an extra plus.
Yeah, it's
So I
called
wanna do
base dot,
Well, I guess.
um,
Could I actually just put this somewhere else?
so you're just outputting, you're just putting the first number.
Yeah.
I don't know how to work, trying to get on
you
there.
wanna do.
Dude,
Plus. So here you're gonna pass in an element as an argument. Yeah.
Yeah, the same thing as you, but it just displays plus.
So you have to do that basically everywhere now. You have this. I mean, you don't have to. So here's the other way you can do this. If you don't care about, so you're saying you need to block now requires you to pass in a position and an element every time. So do you have a position that you can pass in for each of these now too?
Yeah. One unit, so I was just gonna have it, get that position one unit forward, right, left, whatever.
Oh, okay.
Put that over there, this is actually the position state. So we just use whichever position, like here, here's the binding, binding block.
giving you an error, because that should be this thing. That's interesting. This should just work. I don't think that's right. Right there, Michael. Oh, right.
All I need to know for this is,
Yeah. Why is there a problem?
I just think yeah, I guess. I'm almost there, right?
Yeah, you're almost there. This is the tricky part.
Yeah.
You would think it'd be easy if I is equal to what? The first number?
Yeah.
You're working on?
If I is equal to the number line.
Do a different C out statement.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm overthinking this or.
You're on the right track. So you have your loop is currently printing out.
I know that I'm gonna have to replace these with probably
Yeah.
the numbers.
So I would just delete range.
Yeah.
Which is good. I think that's good. You should work with that one. Okay. So your loop is going to loop from. What happens when you replace that?
Yeah, that is that 1 to 10.
Okay, cool. That all looks great. So the things are, I want you to replace the left.
I'm not getting this work, Cody, because of the line.
Did you get it? That's all you need to do. Print out.
So I just not need
No, so you still need a layer. So that thing is saying, hey, I want I to start at 0, and I want it to go as long as it's less than. I want it to start at 0 and go. So why don't you have it say, instead of starting at 0, let's start it at num 1. Why don't you go up until num 2?
And then if I is less than the second number, that's
Do all loops acrylic?
No, it will answer both. Yeah.
that's
And I want you to run this one, do like one.
It answers both just fine.
I mean, I have filed.
So yeah, test it after every time you see it.
No, okay, hold on. Because I haven't done it.
Figure out how to.
Do that.
Nice, turn it off.
See,
Yeah.
the register's both fine.
Okay, cool. So now it's actually printing out the numbers.
But it's not.
Yeah.
Doesn't have equal, but not all.
Yeah, that's got me thinking about program.
It's okay. That's okay, it doesn't work anyway.
Yeah, but I'm trying to get it to where it gets.
Yeah, you can actually the other version is that was the same thing. So this is going to require you to create an if statement because you can't just blindly add. Yeah, like you figure out. You don't necessarily want to have a little plus sign.
I think so.
So you need to set up an if statement that says if the number is equal to the last one here, don't add. So I would have you have to have 2 cout statements. So right now you have to have one cout statement.
The only thing I hate
just
about
like
this is
you should have another cout that's just the number with plus
separate classes in each.
and you use an if statement to choose which of those 2 that you run.
So the if
Well, then
statement,
I'll put in the while, so it is.
so you would put all this in the if statement.
Yeah, so you're gonna have 2 couts, right? One with a plus sign, one without.
No, you should.
And
take
all the if
state
statement's gonna
and
control
anything
is which of those couts do you
resembling
want to
state
run.
and put it in a folder. That way you don't have all
That's
your
the key,
state
so you want to
machine,
use,
because you can use it other than AI. So you might want to move state to a different.
I had
all
mine
your
working,
AI
and then I went over there and was like checking what they were doing, and
AI.
now it doesn't
That
work
way you
anymore.
can use state for other things.
Like now, like I had it literally, but like now it ended everything.
Are you, wait, but you're going from low to high, so you type in a low number first.
Oh, that's probably it.
So if you can make that work, then that'll be good.
Okay.
Because it should work in both cases.
Oh, it should work both ways?
Yeah, it should work both ways, but that's kind of a nice thing.
Or do you have a lot of AI stuff in your state machine?
No.
Just all the raycast stuff?
It's just small, that's just, yeah.
For the AI,
close to play, right?
Oh, that's
Runs
right.
it well.
It checks each block to see which block is right in front of you. If self-discharge is not showing.
Just have to make sure he doesn't blow himself up.
Yeah, you can send that to. It's like 4 shots.
My question is, is it still Bomberman or did it turn planes?
He wants it to be fine.
I just need to know what it's gonna be. It's gonna be planes? How are you gonna work the level?
What do you mean?
Like, you can't have like a Bomberman level with planes.
You can.
Planes fly in the air.
You're hurting your brain. No, it's really just the game.
So you're dropping bombs on the blocks? Is this what's happening?
No, same style. Just like Bomberman, but you're playing.
So where do the bombs sit? Are you rolling on the ground? In a plane?
I don't really care what they do. I'm trying to make it so we're not copying Bomberman, okay? I'm trying to make it just different enough entirely to avoid any copyright. So keep all the gameplay the same, but just make it play. You can't copyright gameplay for things. Are you doing this entire time in school? I don't know what I'm working on. Because I hope you don't plan on selling this at all. You got that. Why? You did sign a contract for the new school, right? Yeah, they all do here at home and see that. No matter what you say. But just so you know, because there already gets people for that.
No, you got that.
No, but
You guys the same.
as long as we're all sort of.
Yeah, you got it. No, whatever you've done with computer. Just let you know. Just.
You do that
The school
second
can't
part
prove
inside
that.
of the loop or would you have to do another loop?
So PA just placeholder, you said
Just let you
placeholder,
know.
you go
A,
that part.
yeah.
It's any project you submit to a
That's only
teacher.
if A is greater
You
than.
cannot sell.
Anything done on school computers.
Did you do it?
Part of the ownership of.
For them to present to the commercial.
So A is greater than.
For the second part?
You can't.
Alright.
Yeah.
A is greater than B.
Got it?
Yeah. By this limit, software, you can say about 20 money.